in the chat box. Whenever a change is introduced in a company, the people will feel shocked. They'll be surprised. Hey, why this? Okay. But then, if it is required to change, the management should be persistent to continue the process of change and communicate the process of change. And when you do it further, the behavior of the person from shock, it would become denial. Hey, is it really true? They will not believe this. All of you type DENIL in the chat box, which is the second stage of the human behavior. The second stage of human behavior, the denial, the disbelief, looking for evidence that it's not true. Hey, I can't believe my eyes. Is it really true that the management is going to do this? Or somebody is going to acquire us? Or we are going to go into the new product? We are going to scrap this machine? Whatever it is, the process of change. Bring in some lean methodology, link in from Six Sigma methodology. Okay. Now, when you receive this shock, you be persistent in the process of change and communicate why this change is important. I will also tell you in each step what is the behavior that you should follow as a leader. And then when you persist, then the people will still don't believe. They are looking for evidence that this is not true. And then they enter into frustration. They enter into frustration. The recognition that things are different, sometimes maybe angry also. How many of you can relate to this? Type ICR in the chat box if you can relate to it. First they are shocked, then they are denial, then they get into frustration. And they'll say, our industry is different. Our country is different. Our place is different. Our people are different. It might work in other industries. It might work in other places. It might be applicable in other environment. How many of you can relate to this? And sometimes they are angry. But then as leaders, we persist this change management process. Okay. Then they go into depression. They go into low mood. They go into their own shell. They lack energy. How many of you can relate to this? Type ICR in the chat box. From shock to denial to frustration to depression. Morally, they are down. And competence also is at its lowest. Okay. Great. Now, from this depression, if the leaders take the right behavioral approach to insist on this change, then people will be willing to experiment. All of you type WTE, willing to experiment in the chat box. That is the initial engagement to try and see, instead of going into depression or denial or shock, let's give it a try. Fair try. Let us give it a fair try. Willing to experience. And then they take a decision. And then they take a decision. Learning how to work in the new situation. They try to adopt it to the change. New situation. And feeling that things are more positive. And then they get themselves integrated with a change. How many of you found this model interesting, useful, exciting, awesome, fantastic? Please share in the chat box. In our country, we had a process called demonetization. And how many of you experienced the same process in demonetization? How many of you excited experience, right? Okay. Now, Let me explain to you. When people, they were shocked when the old currency demonetization happened, when they said this old currency of 1,000 rupee notes and 500 rupee notes are not valid. They're surprised that suddenly in the month of November it was introduced, and they were shocked. And even personally, I was looking at, hey, is it really true? No, it cannot be. This cannot happen. Then it was like frustrating. They gave, okay, 2 months to change your notes, go to the bank, this, that. People were angry. They were standing in front of ATMs, everything. And some of them who had huge piles of notes were depressed. Depressed also. They were lacking in mood, energy, stuff like that. And then we said, okay, now that the leaders were insisting for the better cause of the country, they started experimenting with the new situations. And then they took a decision, and now it's all integrated. Same thing happened in the digital. When they introduced everything to go digital, they said, no, digital cannot be for India because there are so many people who are below the poverty line. Do you think the vegetable vendors will use digital devices, handheld devices? They can't even use mobile phone. It was in denial. They went into frustration. Some people went into depression. Then they were willing to introduce, and then they took a decision. Today, we can proudly say India is digital. How many of you are proud of India who has gone digital? How many of you are proud of India? Please type POI in the chat box. Proud of India. I'm a very patriotic person. Jai Hind. Okay. Very proud of India. Very proud of this thing. Okay, great. So everybody is using API now, okay? Everybody is using UPI, Google Pay, Phone Pay, Paytm, UPI, all that. So if you see this Kubler-Ross curve, from denial to frustration to depression to experimentation to decision to integrate, there are some behaviors that we see. The status, initially nothing changes, then there is a disruption, then there is an exploration that people want to explore new things, and then they want to rebuild. Okay. So the reaction is shock and denial, then they are angry, then they are willing to accept, and then at beginning they are committed. Now is an important bottom line. Okay, the important bottom line is, what is the approach leaders should take? They should communicate the information. In the next class, I will go deeper into this, and I will talk about how to handle this resistance to change. Okay. How many of you will come to my next session? Type WC in the comment box. Welcome. Okay. How to handle the resistance to change. Okay, so many people. Okay, oh my God, 800 plus people today. Super. So initially, when you get a denial, keep communicating. Keep communicating. Okay. Yeah, this is every Wednesday. You can register for this upcoming session and get these presentations, recordings, videos, and all things. Those who have not registered for this, go ahead and register now so that you can, I'll tell you how to access these recordings, presentation, and all that. If you like this presentation, if you like this recording. So when people are frustrated and depressed, watch them, empathize with them, listen to them, and support them. And when they're trying to experiment, don't be sarcastic, don't ridicule them, don't pull out a collar and say, look, I pushed things through. No. Give them time to explore, test it, empathize with them. And finally, when they decide and get integrated with a new system, please appreciate them. Please celebrate the change. Okay. And so how to handle this resistance to change will be the topic in the next session, which is logically I wanted to take it. I thank each and every one of you for having attended today's session. If today's session was interesting, valuable, useful, fantastic, awesome, please put it in the chat box. I'll draw inspiration for having conducted today's session. And I will also answer your questions shortly. Sincerely thank each and every one of you. All right. Now, those of you who are, this is 50, just for those who came a little late, these are all 50-week sessions. This is absolutely free. There's no, no monetary things that I talk about in this. But there are people who wanted to do in 50 days. If you're interested to do it in 50 days, I'll give you a roadmap and a plan. Type 50D in the chat box if you're willing to. Tommy Roy is very particular. Why are you making this free? Tommy Roy, you can pay me, okay? You alone can pay me. I'll send you an invoice. Okay. He's asking me, he has typed almost